Yo, what's up guys? It's your boy Miggle and we are back with another awesome video. In this video, I'll be walking you guys through the exact credit card application sequence to maximize your funding in the shortest period of time while giving you a safety net of protection. So this sequence, when done correctly, will easily get you over $100K in funding to invest in your next real estate deal. So let's get into it. So we're going to be going over 4 of the top most largest national banks out there. Number 1 we're starting with, I've said it once and I will say it again, is Chase Bank. We love that bank. Best benefits, best rewards, multiple business credit cards, and they give high credit limits. And with Chase, the 2 cards that we're going to apply for is you could go apply for their other cards that has rewards, but for all intents purposes, if we're focusing on real estate, we want to focus on 0%. So those are all the type of cards I'm going to explain. But with Chase, we've got the Business Inc. Unlimited and the Business Inc. Cash Card. They are both 0% interest for 12 months. Cool little side note for Chase, I mentioned it in an earlier video, is you can apply for 2 at once. So it's totally fine to get approved for high limit card on the first one, and you can immediately apply again for the second one at the same time. Another big hack with this is if you have multiple LLCs, you can transfer those credit limits around across LLCs. So if you get, let's say, 250K cards on LLC 1, and you want to apply for those same cards with LLC 2, you want to pay these cards down, and then they'll get you that same funding on the second LLC, and you can transfer these credit limits onto these ones. So if this 0% is done, just transfer it over to this other LLC that still has 0% running. So now you have more funding and you have more 0% time. So cool. Now, number 2, this is a tied second. I've said it again also, is American Express. They are Chase and Amex are the top 2 banks. They are duking it out. But Amex, they also have 2 0% business credit cards. They don't give as high as limits off the rip as Chase, but there is a strategic way about going with it. But you could apply for the Amex Blue Business Cash or the Amex Blue Business Plus. Both are 0%. If you have a personal credit card, we could transfer those limits to the business credit cards, so you make sure you get larger limits. I mentioned this in the other video, but have a relationship with Amex on the personal side, increase those credit limits on that card so you could later transfer it to the business credit cards. So make sure you've applied for that credit limit increase and transfer all your personal credit cards to one Amex card if you have multiple, so you could transfer that credit limit from the big card to the business and increase that 0% leverage. Now, number 3, we got US Bank. This bank, unfortunately, only has one 0% business credit card, and it's the US Bank Business Platinum. Cool thing about this card, though, is it's 18 months. Usually cards are like 12 months. Sometimes you'll see them for 6, 9, 12 is usually the standard. 18 months, that's a year and a half. That's a long time to get your ROI back. So that's a really good card to go through. Fourth and foremost is got to be kind of the shittiest bank is Bank of America. They really suck just because they do give low limits, but they have 3 0% business credit cards you can apply for, and you're able to apply for all 3 at once and only get 1 inquiry on Experian. So if you apply for them all on the same day, they'll pull just 1 time from Experian. Again, they're going to be low limits, but at the end of the day, if you're able to stack more and more funding on top of each other, who gives a shit? So those are the top 4 banks. Note, if you're just starting out with funding and investing, and I'll go more about this in chapter 5 in the investing section, but if you don't have any experience with funding or like investing in real estate, you don't really have that, how I described it earlier, is if you don't have that vehicle, but you have a bunch of gasoline, which is the funding, I wouldn't suggest being super aggressive with applying, just because if you have a lot of funds but you aren't confident on the investment vehicle, you could easily get really irresponsible with the funding. So slow and steady wins the race. So for example, if you only need 50K on a deal, you could easily get that between 1 to 2 cards. You don't want a bunch of funding just sitting around, not being employed and working for you. So don't get too funding crazy if you're not ready to invest it. Because ideally, once you get approved for the card and you activate it, you want to start employing it immediately so you could work 24/7 while you're asleep and start, accruing appreciation, getting those deals, so on and so forth. Now, earlier I mentioned we were applying for these cards first to give us a safety net. So what I meant by that is we want to establish relationships with the top banks first. If we do need to extend the 0% terms for whatever reason, let's say you get into a deal, you don't get the ROI back in time within a year, we want to be able to extend those 0% terms. And let's just say, I'm just taking worst case scenario, let's say you pass all the debt off from all the top banks and then the lower banks. We want to pass that debt on to a lower tier bank. So in the minimum chance you can't pay back the banks, just extend the 0% terms by paying them off with another 0% card, which is something I'll go through in another video on how to do it. But let's say you can't pay back the banks. For me, I'd rather ruin my relationship with a smaller player than a big player. The big players are going to give you a lot higher credit limits, and they do more business with different banks. So start with grade A banks, then go down to the state, more local banks, then banks that are specific to your city/county banks, and even the credit unions. But the idea is, if for whatever reason we need to pass that debt baton and push off the 0% terms for multiple years, you're not ruining your relationship with Chase. You're ruining your relationship with a really small player, because with Chase, we could just keep applying for more funding with them with multiple LLCs. So I'm going to be introducing you guys a resource of a bunch of banks you could apply to state by state that will literally outline your whole funding roadmap with notes and information/tips on the banks and data points to get approved with those. Something, I might have to record another video on it, but something that I've done is I have 3 LLCs, one based in California, one in Wyoming for tax purposes, and another one out in here in Indiana for fix and flips. I could get funding for all 3 of those. So there is a lot of possibility the more relationships you have, especially in different states, because it opens you up to much more options for funding. But hope that was helpful, guys. I look forward to seeing y'all get funding. Please make sure to post your student wins in the Facebook group. This is just going to help newer students fast track their success, and we can all work together as a unit and as a community to improve the best practices. Every time somebody sees you win, they're going to be motivated, and we're going to be able to learn a little bit from each other each application we do. But peace out, much love. See you guys in the next one.